Greetings. My name is Dr. Waddell Brooks, Sr., your host, and this is Community Forum. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an outstanding program for you this evening, one that's been talked about all over the nation and really all over the world. And we're going to be talking to Mrs. Aileen Smith. And Ms. Aileen Smith is a community activist, and she's going to be talking about the power of her testimony. We also have her granddaughter, Jelani Franklin. She's with us to have a special part in the program also. Greetings, folks. We're very happy that you've taken time for your busy schedule to be with us to talk about this important topic about, well, it started out as sexual harassment, but it's really sexual abuse, really. I mentioned about sexual harassment because I was the director of equal employment opportunity locally before my retirement, in charge of sexual harassment. Okay. But now that has grown so that it's to sexual abuse, which is more serious. And it's sexual harassment was illegal, but sexual abuse is more serious, because it's illegal and you can be imprisoned, for it. So I'm happy that you have come forward, like thousands of others in the country, to talk about it. It may help someone else. So I would like for you to tell our listening audience a little bit about your childhood growth first. Okay.
I found it to be very important to touch on this subject because the older generation, they have often taught us what's done in the family stays in the family. Okay. And eventually that goes from generation to generation. That curse never goes away because of the silencing. So I decided to come forth, and hopefully my testimony can help someone else. My childhood, I had a good childhood. My mother saw that I had a good childhood, and my predator was my landlord. You can never trust, was my landlord, and he would come. My mother worked 2-3 jobs, and he would come in the mornings before I go to school and sexually abused me. And as a young girl, you're scared. You're often scared to tell someone, so you keep it to yourself, and that goes on, that continuously it goes on. Every day it was going on. I would get sexually abused, and I just found it hard to sit back and allow another child to go through that without speaking up. And my only regret, my only hurt behind that is my silencing. Because of my silencing, I don't know how many more came after me. I don't know how many other girls he affected. And so that's why it's very important for me to come forward with this, Also, I like to stress to everyone to teach your children about the good touch and the bad touch, and we fail to do that. And so as children, we stay silent because we haven't been informed about the good touch and the bad touch, And
I have to admire you for doing this because Oprah Winfrey went through the same thing, and she didn't have anybody to contact or afraid to contact. I think she said when she was about 9 years old, I guess, and this was a relative, I think, that did this. So I have to admire you for coming forward to impress upon the seriousness of this act.
And it's in every family. It's in every family. And what happens when that happens to you when you're a young child, I want to speak on the enemy for those who don't know who I'm talking about. I'm speaking on the devil. Okay. And the enemy targets our mind at a very early age, we immediately fall into that victim mentality. We feel shameful. We feel we did something wrong. We go through life with this secret, and we making it our life sentence as if we did something wrong and we did not. You know, so it's very important for us to speak our testimony to help somebody else. So I feel.
This is fantastic. Now, how long did this go before you told your mother?
Well, I didn't tell my mom.
Okay.
I didn't tell my mom, and I regret not telling my mother, but just like a lot of children, we don't speak out out of fear. It's just out of fear we don't speak, you know. So I didn't share this with my mom until I got older. Yeah.
Now, were you ashamed at what happened, or how did you deal with it?
At first I was. At first I was ashamed. The enemy kept telling me I'm a victim.
Okay.
And then he kept telling me I wasn't worth much. I'm ashamed of all the wrong things I did behind that tainted mind. I like to speak on the tainted mind because when that happens to you, I had a good heart. I had a good childhood up until that point. And when the molestation started, my mind was tainted. And I like to say that my mind was tainted. It was like a battlefield, you know, a fight between good and evil. I was good here and my mind was tainted. So I would act out. And I was ashamed at first, and the enemy kept telling me my value was low. I was ashamed of all the wrong things I did behind that tainted mind. That's why I share my story. Maybe it will save someone else from going down that path. Maybe seeing the deliverance in me, they will realize that God loves them, and they will see their self-worth. And I often get tears behind this because I can't imagine, this is my granddaughter, and I can't imagine staying silent because I have to think about when I look at my grandchild, and this is very important to me to share my testimony.
Now, well, what do you think would be going through your granddaughter's mind there? What do you think she would say? Because she's, like your granddaughter here is how old?
She's 5.
Okay. Then she has a testimony there that she want to share with us on a card.
Okay.
Why don't we see?
I don't want to be a victim.
Okay, Jelaine, what is your testimony? What does it say?
I don't want to be a victim.
I don't want to be a victim. This is so important. Now here's a child trying to reach other children, right? Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just go back?
So you were a victim and didn't want to by a landlord and didn't want to tell anybody because you were.
I couldn't tell anyone, and that's the trick. That's the trick of the enemy because it's not that we don't want to. We feel that guilty ourselves behind something that we did not do. And the effect that it had on me, it was a battle, between the good and the evil. And I can go on either side. Behind the molestation, I did feel worthless, and I suffered from low self-esteem and shame and loneliness. And as I got older, because my self-worth had no value. I felt I needed a man to validate me. I found myself putting up with unthinkable things in a relationship just to feel loved. And I always had that void. I was a good, loving person. How my mom raised me, and after that molestation, after that tainted mind, I started acting out, not quite sure of the damage. I began to numb that pain because you do have a void growing up. It is something missing. And I began to numb that pain with alcohol and drugs. And you got to know, a secret without deliverance leaves a big hole in your heart. You never feel free until you get delivered. And with deliverance, it changes your mindset, and you start seeing yourself like God sees you. You start seeing your worth. But you can never get delivered as long as you're silent. You can never be free. So I was ashamed of all the things, all the wrong things I did behind that tainted mind. And I'm just hoping with me coming forward, I can help someone else from going down that path of alcohol and drugs and that lifestyle. You know, I can just help someone.
So alcohol and drugs, you found out, was not the answer.
It's not the answer. Not the answer. But I felt so empty. And by me not being raised with my father, and that's one thing I want to stress to the fathers out there. It's very important that you stay in your daughters' lives, because one of the things the predators do, they prey on the weak, and they prey on the ones that don't have that father figure to stand behind them. You know, so it's very important to stay in your daughter's life. Although, you know, the facts were accurate, because how I was living and how I was acting out, you know, people often pass judgment on me. And I just, all growing up, I just wished, you know, people wouldn't judge a book, you know, by its cover. They don't know what a person do. They don't know why a person do the things they do. And they don't know their story. They don't know if the enemy had tainted their mind at an early age. We so quick to judge people, and we don't know how they got to where they are. And so I don't. So I don't judge. I try to see people for who they are, and not from their habits or things like that, because a lot of mistakes I made didn't mean I was a bad person, just mean the enemy had tainted my mind and I was off balance. And so I just jotted down a few things because I want people to understand there's some hurting people out there, and we should not look at what they do. And so I put some things down. I don't judge the woman that walks the street and selling her body, because we don't know if she has that tainted mind. I don't judge that addict that desperately needs that drug because of a tainted mind. I don't judge that alcoholic that begs on the corner, a tainted mind. That girl that thinks so little of herself, she sleeps with boys in alleys and basements and back seats of cars and schools and bathrooms and public places because of that tainted mind. That girl that dresses provocative for attention, tainted mind. That homosexual that don't know their identity, a tainted mind. So before you pass judgment, I speak on myself and others. When someone takes your body without your permission, your body loses its value. And therefore, it's easy to fall into those traps behind a tainted mind. They don't need criticism, they need to be delivered. And so I think a lot of the mistakes I made is because of have no value. I didn't feel valuable. So
You know, my wife, Dr. Daisy Brooks, at Daisy Resource Optional School, there was a high school young lady graduating from high school with 4 children. 4 children. Now she was. What was she missing? Now was she just lost all of her self-esteem? Just figured that was the way to go.
well, I don't know her
what happened in
past.
her life.
I don't know her past. I don't know if she
But-
was abused or,
Okay. Yeah.
but that's usually the case.
Okay.
And it's not like they enjoy the sexual favors or anything like people think, or give them a title or call them out their name. It's just they want to be loved.
And there was no man probably in that house, the father figure, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, that probably would not have happened.
They prey on the ones without a father to protect them.
That sounds like a sheep and the pastor. You know, the sheep will wander and just follow wherever he leads me, he'll go. And unless God is leading them, they will go astray.
Yeah,
It's like the sheep that are going astray. And that's when the sheep is used quite a bit in the Bible too, because the sheep needs direction, and if that young lady does not have direction by the good shepherd, because the good shepherd, then they will go astray. And we have so many, like you say, the devil is taking advantages, you know, of this this situation.
And they have to be delivered. If there's no deliverance, they'll continue to attract the same type of relationships, and they will make the same mistakes. They have to be delivered in order to feel good about themselves.
Now you've mentioned about an abusive situation, but we gonna stick with your childhood, youth, you know, and the things that you went through with, maybe to help others. But what about the women in the workforce today that are being abused? You know, like secretaries or what other positions, they just afraid to speak out because they're afraid they may lose their job.
Correct.
This the type of thing, you know. And the devil is preying on these are grown women, you know, that are working. They're not children. But what can be done? Oh, I shouldn't ask you what could be done to stop this, because thousands are coming out now that were abused and talking, and as they come out, then thousands more are coming out, and now the law protects them because there are millions of dollars that are spent by you know, the abusers.
Yes.
You know, and hope that will curb or stop this abusive situations during employment, right?
And a lot of them are fearful to speak.
Okay.
And I did touch on that in this, but a fear of losing their job.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
what would they tell their husbands, though? You know, or maybe some are not married, though. They, like I say, like the sheep that are going astray and that are not married, and no one to tell. They don't tell their co-workers or whoever. So the women are just started to speaking out now, and maybe that will stop this situation. But what about your situation, your childhood, the other peers? Did you talk with them about your situation?
No, I didn't. I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't speak with anyone. It was a kept secret.
Okay. Okay.
It was a kept secret of mine. The reason why I decided to speak is God gave me, in Genesis 50:20, he said, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. You want to take it?
Okay. I can't. Okay.
This is one of the biggest kept secrets. If I can just read off my notes.
Okay, right.
This is one of the biggest kept secrets. I want to empower women to stop being silent and know that they have a purpose after this. Mm-hmm. The enemy still has an effect on the mind. We often think we are delivered, but because of the tears stopped. And that's what we do, we stop crying. We think we're delivered.
Okay.
And this is how you know that the enemy have control over your mind. Because I've talked to so many women and they think everything is good because the tears stop, and they think that's all it takes for the tears to stop. But whenever God delivers you from something, it should be your testimony. Mm-hmm. And if you can't give your testimony, or you're ashamed to give your testimony, you're still in bondage, you know? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He still have control over you. And he still wants you to think like a victim. And these are some of the many tricks that I put down here, some of the many tricks of the enemy. People think they are delivered, but I'm going to show you how you're not. Mm-hmm. The enemy is still telling you, don't tell nobody. It's our family secret. And nobody will believe you anyway. You had to do something to provoke it. This is some of the things that is told to us. So a lot of women don't come forward because this is what they deal with, you know, something you did or you caused it or, you know, something like that. Or it's my boyfriend, he's sorry, he won't do it again. Mm-hmm. This is how daddy shows his love to his daughters.
Oh.
We don't want that family member to go to jail. Mm-hmm. So these are some of the things that allows us to stay silent. The enemy wants to keep you in bondage. He knows once you get delivered, and once you get that revelation that God loves you, a lot of souls can be saved behind this because it's bigger than we think. Mm-hmm. It's because of our grandparents being quiet, you know. Mm-hmm. It goes down the line. I want to tell the women this. I want to tell the women this. God allowed you to go through this storm to deliver you out so you can do his work. Mm-hmm. But we choose to put that testimony on a shelf and follow the enemy and stay silent. Mm-hmm. We're doing just what the devil wants us to do when we stay silent. He don't want us to speak. He doesn't want us to say anything. And in that secrecy, the predators are getting away and molesting one child after another. Mm. And surely God doesn't want the predators to molest our children. We say God loves us, and we say we love God, We call him a healer.
Mm-hmm.
We claim him to be the beginning and the end.
Mm-hmm.
And we call him our deliverer. We know when God delivers us, he delivers us so he can get the glory.
Mm-hmm.
Your deliverance becomes your testimony. And your testimony is to be shared to help someone. And I must say this, we have gotten so arrogant. We put that secret testimony and put it in the box and seal it up. And therefore God never gets the glory.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And his work he wanted us to do will never get done. So if you get delivered and you don't share it, no one will see his power or see his works. And
You mentioned about the power of your testimony, and this is one way to, that's where you got freed, and you're hoping that others will be free too from the devil too, right? From your testimony, and God is the answer through prayer. Prayer is the answer. There's no doubt about it there. So this is the way out, and I guess the church is more than just a building. The church is, it says in the heart, and your heart has to be changed.
exactly.
So we talk about the chain to be broken. We got different government programs that don't encourage chain to be broken. They just keep people in the program. But what would you recommend to break that chain?
Coming forward, not being afraid,
Okay.
realizing you're not a victim. You did nothing wrong.
Okay.
And I often stress this a lot because this assignment is so huge. And with us feeling like we're victims, God gave us such a big assignment. Mm-hmm. This is such a huge assignment. And I truly believe he allows us to go through that storm, to get delivered so we can come out and be his working vessel, But we choose not to do the work because we're worried about what the people say. Mm-hmm. And that hurts me the most because we have people that knows the power of deliverance, that goes to church, but they refuse to tell the story because they're worried about what the people going to say. How are they going to get judged behind it, Mm-hmm. Instead of worrying about that next little girl that's next in line to be hurt. And we care so much about our reputation, and we should be caring about the children.
If the people only realize all through life, you're either in a storm, you're going through a storm, or coming out of a storm. Mm-hmm. So, but here we concern about children, and at any age. And you mentioned about how it starts sitting on the lap of a trusted person.
Mine started with the grooming. He had me sit on his lap.
Okay.
And they'll do little small things like that to see if you're gonna tell.
Okay.
So if you choose to tell your parent, they'll have a good excuse. Well, she was just sitting on my lap. Okay. And when you don't tell, they'll take it further. So that's called grooming. They groom you first to see if they can take it a little further. Of course, mine went a little further. But I was blessed to get out of that situation after about a year, maybe, because we moved. So I was blessed to get out of that situation.
Okay, so that's one way of getting away from it, just move away
Well,
from it. Yeah.
we moved.
Okay.
It was my landlord, my mother's landlord.
Okay. 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 Hmm. So you were very fortunate to be able to move, but there's so many children are involved in close friends, funneling and so forth, and they think that's just the way of a lifestyle, right? So they like you say, they afraid to tell their parents, afraid to tell their mother or whatever. They just let this keeps going. If they only could be reminded that God loved them so much that He allowed His only begotten Son to come into this world, suffer for Him, die for Him. He loved them so much He did that, you know. And that's love.
That's love.
That's love,
That's,
you know.
that's really, yeah.
You know.
And if you can't expose them or if it's too late, just get delivered.
Okay.
Set free. Don't be ashamed. You didn't do anything wrong. And just share your testimony. And I would like to stress, parents, please guard your children. You have to be overly protective. Unfortunately, guard your children. And I wrote this down because when I had my time with God, and I can only imagine God saying these words, and this is to my this is to the women that's been abused. Daughters, I allowed you to go through this storm. I even sent my grace and mercy. I gave my only son as your personal savior. I delivered many, and I dried up many tears. I didn't even get the glory. I wanted them to share their testimony, to become my working vessels, but they chose to idolize the devil with the silencing of their tongue. So if you don't have a reason to break the silence or to speak your testimony or to expose the predator, then just speak on the goodness of God and the power of deliverance and how we can endure this pain. I don't understand how we can endure this pain and stay silent. You know, that bothers me because it's children out there, you know, and to go through it and be so selfish and say, well, I made it out. Now let them go through it. It's so selfish to me. And my granddaughter had to leave, but because of our silence, that's the next generation of victims. And that was her purpose for being here, because of, if you don't have no other reason to speak or share your testimony, do it for them, because they're the next victims. They're the next ones in line. And it just, we have to do what God called us to do, and we have to have that that love to want to protect and not to want to support the enemy. And that's what you're doing when you're quiet. You're giving the enemy power to use the predators to victimize more children.
It's a very serious. I was reading about Anita Hill. This was 3 decades ago. 26 years ago, when she brought it to the attention that a Supreme Court nominee, had to arrest her, and what she could say now is, I tried and it has come to fruition that women are coming forward now, but that was, and these are grown women, you know, we're talking about children, you know, going through this. But why would a predator prey on a child? Father is a parent, and father of children himself. Why? Because the devil, I mean, that just, he's a strong person. He's a spirit too, you know, and we just can't fight him. We have to pray and to God that God give us strength to endure or go through it, you know. But why would a man do this to? And he has a wife and children himself.
Okay. Well, you know, the enemy is not selective.
Okay.
He's going to target any and everybody. And just like he targets us as the victims, he's going to target them as well.
Okay.
You know, so we're victimized, but they're used by the enemy too to do what he wants them to do. It's a sick thing.
Okay.
I don't understand it. I'll never understand the mind of a predator.
Okay.
But I do know they need help as well. I don't know what happened in their life to cause them.
Okay.
And like I said, you know, it goes back to that book. I don't even know what happened in their lives to make them act and do the things they do.
Because incarceration is not going to change them. It's something functioning in the brain, you know, that's not right. That
That's
has
right.
to be adjusted. They need counseling, but incarceration is not going to change them, you know. So we have to they have to want to be changed themselves.
Exactly.
And maybe through the counseling, something will be said or done to cause them to want to change. They have to want to change.
They have to get exposed first.
Okay.
You know, and they'll never want to change because we're not exposing them.
Okay.
And so if it's good and you can get away, they're going to get away. And we have to do our part first and expose them. You know, it's very important that we expose them.
But what effect on your childhood going through this did it have? Because you knew something was wrong, something was not right, right? So what effect did it have upon you going through your childhood?
Well, I often say it was a battle between good and evil. It's like I can fit in on either side, you know, and it was rough, you know, because of being off balance. I was lonely. I was a loner, pretty much, you know. I was just a loner, and I just substituted things to fill the void.
Because there was a definitely big void there, right?
A secret is hard. It's hard to live with a secret. It's very hard to live with a secret. You can go on thinking everything is good, but it was hard. Because
now, did you have sisters and brothers?
I have one brother.
Okay, okay. And you didn't feel comfortable talking with him about it then, right?
Because it happened so early on.
Okay.
Because it happened so early on, you get that victim mentality.
That you're the victim.
And it's shame. For some reason, you feel like it's your fault. So a lot of people don't talk. I could feel comfortable with my brother. I felt comfortable, and I love my mother. And
now, did you have other friends, female friends that that you felt maybe going through the same thing?
I'm sure.
They didn't talk about it.
No.
That's the key. No one talks
No one
about
talks about it. No one talks about it. There may be some conflict with the older generation with me talking about it now because they were taught what stays in the family. What's done in the family stays in the
it.
family.
I still hear that now.
And so it passes on. So no one talks about it. But I promise you, if they had a family gathering, they'll realize uncle or
Yeah.
somebody went down the line in the family. But it's a secret.
That's the reason the Bible is so real. It's the living Bible anyway. Hebrews, I think it speaks about together. I forgot the 11th chapter, I believe. But because when you get together, you share information that others are going through the same problem, or you may help someone that going through the same problem that you're going through it, or you may get help. You either help someone or get help. Sharing of information, and that's why we should, go to church on a regular basis, and because that's so important. It speaks to that, and that's the reason,
I often thought that I was healed because of the tears had stopped, but something was burning on the inside. It was like it didn't sit well with me to have that mentality. I got mine, now you go through it and get yours.
Okay.
And anytime God delivers you from something, I feel that it's your purpose. You shouldn't be silent. You should want to go out and work. A lot of us, we go to church, yes, but what are we doing? Are we working?
Okay.
Are we fulfilling our purpose? Are we just going to church? We all have a purpose. We all got delivered from a storm.
But we should be sharing testimonies in church,
Doing the work
Yeah.
to help someone else.
So I congratulate you, and now you know the power of a testimony, and have you considered having a group of other women together and just talk?
One of my dreams is to have a panel of women
Okay.
that's willing to go forward, to share their story, to help someone else, And the purpose of that is I don't want them to go down the path I went down. If I can stop them from that pain for so many years, I'm 54 now, and I spent mostly all my life, in this secret and in this hurt.
Yeah.
And so if I can stop someone from going down that path, and that's the whole purpose of trying to get a group of women together to go around and talk to the young girls and help them out.
Because all these years you've been just in a shameful situation, right? And just didn't know how to come out of it.
The thing that hurt the most was growing up with that, and I like to say tainted mind, and doing the things that I was doing, and the embarrassment that I probably caused my family, and the shame I probably brought on to my children. Behind that incident, that's the biggest regret that I have. And that's the one thing that I wanted, that allowed me to come forward, because it does have an effect on you, and it does have a hold on you. And I just can't understand why we're silent. And I just wish women would come forward for the sake of the babies. And even if they don't want to come forward, just talk about God, because without getting delivered, I'll still be lost.
Okay.
You know, I'll still think less of myself. I'll still I'll still feel like it was probably my fault that I didn't tell. So that's the only regret I have for not speaking out. Because I had neighbors upstairs, and I'm not sure if, you know.
You know, something just came to my mind. What about women predators? Are they prevalent too in society?
I'm sure.
Because once in a while I read in the paper a teacher
Teachers,
got fired because of
yeah.
being a predator. But you don't hear too much about it.
You
It's
don't hear
always,
too much
always the
about
men
that.
being the predator, yeah?
And that's the sad thing, is you see that often in the papers now, where the women teachers are messing with the young boys, and yeah, that's sad. That's,
So it works both ways.
it works both ways. That's how I feel.
So,
A predator is a predator.
okay,
A child is still a child. The hurts is still the same.
right. Okay, so I just want to put that in the mix there, and I just thought about that after thinking about reading the papers, you know, about women predators, you know. And people never think about women as being predators, you know.
Right.
So you have the solution, and that's God, right?
All the way. Deliverance. You have to get delivered, but you can't get delivered until you are willing to expose your hurt. You can't get delivered if it's a secret. You have to expose the hurt to get delivered.
Right. Well, Mrs. Smith, it goes back biblically. There was harassment back then. I'm sure that must have been, I can't recall the predators, but I'm sure there were predators back then too.
Right.
But I know there was harassment being done back then. So it's like we mentioned about, you either in a storm, you're going through, or coming out, and that's a lifetime. And that's, you got to have a lifetime of prayer. We have to keep praying. Well, the scripture has an answer for everything, and say man ought to always pray and not faint. You know, and that's always. And it hadn't just got started, it's right from the beginning of time. So you're on the right track. We have to pray. But I was leaning on the groups. You know, if you get a women's group, you probably find out that women in the group, some of those have not come forward too.
Most
Right.
of those probably have not come forward. Before I started speaking on this, is bigger than I could imagine.
Okay, I got you.
It's bigger than I could imagine. And that explains when you look around and you say go to the high school and you see a lot of the girls, the way they dress or the way they carry themselves is so, like I said, that tainted mind is bigger
Just a
than
lifestyle, right? But for them.
So,
But to get out of the home, then the mother's evidently under the same deal there. They're doing the same thing, right? If the letting the child go out. You think it may be mothers may know that this is going on and they don't speak out? Is that a possibility? Have you heard
in my case, no. But yes, is going on. It could be someone close,
Yeah.
and they don't want to talk about it. I mean, I can't imagine being a parent and my daughter is going through this, and it's a family member that's close to me that's doing it. I couldn't imagine as a parent how that would feel to have the predator and the victim.
I know
But it happens.
Yeah,
It
Dr.
happens.
Field covers this quite a bit on his programs daily too. That he has these type of he's dealing with. But what he does, he has the funds and the connections, having the people go to get help,
Correct.
and he funds the treatment for them. You know, there are treatment centers. You know that. And if the people willing to do it, they have to be willing to, and then he will support them.
I tried to, like I said, I tried to fill this void with a lot of different things, but the only thing that worked for me was finding God and getting a relationship
key, okay.
and getting delivered.
But that's finding God is an individual thing, right? They have to be willing to
They have
do
to
it,
be
right?
willing to.
Well, being led to, I
Yes.
take that back. The church is one
To
that,
have an overseer
yeah,
over them.
right.
I was blessed to have my bishop, Aileen Smith, guide me. But one of the things, I wanted to speak on the victims, and I also wanted to touch on the predators as well,
Okay.
if I may.
Yes. We
Because-
have just enough time for you to do that.
Because I don't want to leave them out.
Right.
And if I can have
Yeah.
I'm gonna read my notes, but I'm gonna kind of face the camera.
No,
here.
you're comfortable.
If you're under, this is for the predators, if you're under the sound of my voice, I want you to look into my eyes that cried so many tears behind the hurts and the mistakes I made behind that tainted mind. The emotional and mental pain I endured, I'm the product that suffered behind your sick perversion, your selfish mentality. You didn't care about that little girl that felt so alone and was too scared to tell. You didn't know I hated my body and felt ugly and unworthy most of my life. And you didn't know I caused my mom so much pain and agony behind that tainted mind. And you didn't know about that little girl that needed her mind refocused from her own perversion thoughts she thought was normal because of you. You may get away because of our silence, enjoying your cushion life, molesting other girls. And one thing for sure, you will stand before God on behalf of us women and girls. God will fight our battle for us. And I suggest you get delivered as well.
May I have that? We had, at the beginning of the program, we had Jelani, remind the audience that I don't want to be a victim. And she's how old?
It's 5.
Only 5 years old, and she's reaching out, and she don't want to be a victim. How many others that are victims, that need to be reached out to, that are not telling their mothers or their grandparents about? Like I mentioned, the sexual harassment went on, and and civil rights movement there. The young lady for 26 years before, and like I mentioned, that I can mention her name because she mentions it to every on her program, Oprah Winfrey. Since she was 9 years old, she just thought that was the lifestyle and the way of life. Who she's afraid to tell anybody about it. But what bothers me is that the predators have mothers and they have daughters themselves, and what goes on into, it only, I asked a question, but it only can be corrected by God, praying to God. And they have to want to do it themselves.
Correct.
That's the key. They have to want to do it. No matter what you do, they have to come forward. And how many are going to come forward?
Right, they won't come forward, and most time we won't ever come forward or get delivered until we hit rock bottom or get caught.
Okay, that's what happened on Dr. Phil's show, I guess. Yeah. That's the key. You hit rock bottom or get caught, and then they do something about it. But what about the thousands of others? Okay, well, closing remarks, and we'll let you go to tell our listening audience your closing remarks you want to make to, I guess the closing remarks would be to the predator, really, right?
Yeah, and once again, they need to be delivered too. But my closing remark is for the young ladies out there that feel like you're a victim. God loves you more than you can imagine to give you a test as great as this, to go out and help someone else. Our purpose and our calling is to go forward and tell our story so we could expose the predator and we could be a safety, so the kids can be safe. And we need to do our part.
Well, Aileen, I want to thank you very much
Thank you.
for coming out and sharing your story. And once again, I want to let the audience know that this beautiful young lady here is the Black Beauty of the Month. I just want to share with you that, and to come out and tell us what she has been through with, and she want to keep others from going through the same thing. We want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to another awareness session on Community Forum. My name is Dr. Wandell Brooks Sr., your host.